Hello. Welcome back to the Girlfriends and Goals podcast. My name is Samaria, and I'm joined by my best friend and co host.
Miosha.
And today we're reviewing Married at First Sight, season 18, episode 8. But before we get into that, please make sure that you are subscribed to our channel. Give this video a thumbs up and meet us in the comments to let us know what you think or what you thought about this episode. All right, let's start with Carla and Juan. They didn't have much.
Yeah, they didn't have much. I will say I liked their theme. I don't know that I've seen a Toga theme, but then again, I haven't watched all the seasons of Married at First Sight, so I enjoyed the
Okay.
theme. Yeah.
I felt like I felt like it lacked originality. I feel like every
You were a mess.
no, but it was cute, but I was just like, oh, how original. I literally wrote that down because
Oh.
every movie about every movie on a college campus or a PWI campus has something about a toga party. But
Oh, okay.
was it just me, or did they have the cameras all up in the toilet when Juan was cleaning it? Wasn't that gross to you?
It was, and we get the point. They showed him cleaning a few times this episode, so that seems to be the theme of, I guess, what they're going through. Based off what we saw, you could make the assumption that Carla isn't helping much around the house. I'm not saying that she isn't, but they start off with her saging, making sure the energy is good, and he's cleaning and preparing for the party, getting the food together. Um, we could just jump straight to this party,
Yeah, because the
where
friend came ready. This is the type of friend
can you want to take a seat? No, I'm good.
I like standing up. I like my feet to get tired. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. But he says, oh, it's going good so far. He's still learning her. Her friend asks, well, what's the biggest piece? He says communication. He says, oh, well, I just don't know her. I just don't know. Her friend says, well, Carla's been pretty independent, and the littlest things make her happy, which I've been getting that vibe from her. I think some people made the assumption because she wants to be taken care of that she's expecting expensive things, lavish things, but I get that the meaningful things matter to her. Maybe I'm reading her wrong, but she says, she enjoys compliments. Do you ever compliment her? And he's like, oh, I don't want to do too much. And I'm like, say more. I thought he was going to say because I don't want to give her a big head, but he
That's
didn't
what I
say that.
thought too.
I'm like, what'd you say? Why? Just because of the way that he phrased
Started
it.
it.
He says, "Oh, but I don't want to do too much,
He was
but
like,
I could do
sometimes I
better."
do, but I don't go too far because, or something like that.
Yeah, and so I think she said that Carla mentioned to her that she's not really sure that he's really into what they have going on, and I'd agree because to me he doesn't seem interested.
Well, I think anytime you give feedback to a romantic partner and their response is, well, I'm so busy with my career and workouts, because then I go to the gym and then I have to sleep and then when I wake up, I have to make coffee, so I don't really have time to give her a compliment. Like anytime that a romantic partner goes into all the things that are preventing them from the smallest of tasks that has to do with you, I think it's obvious that he doesn't care. Like, you didn't know that you had work and workouts before you signed up to get married. Like, did you not think a wife would require attention? So I think even though they don't show Juan and Carla a lot, I think there's a lot that Carla is picking up that we don't get to see, with the cameras.
Because a compliment doesn't require time. I think it just requires interest.
Literally no time at
Yeah,
all.
and then something that he kept saying that I didn't care for much was how he was just kept saying, "Oh, well, I don't know. She has to tell me. She has to tell me." And while I agree in that in the early stages of a relationship, you are learning your person. However, it's not Carla's job to raise you. I think some of the things that she's asking seemed to be relatively
So basic.
basic. And I could
Hmm.
understand whether it was a man or a woman, you don't necessarily want to have to school them on how to operate in a romantic relationship. Now, if the feelings aren't there, they're not there. But this whole, well, I don't know, I'm not buying it. I
Mm-mm.
get because those feelings aren't there for you, you're not motivated, and so you're not doing it.
And that's okay. It's okay not to find her I think next week, based on the previews, he shares that, he's not attracted to her. And that's fine. Like, she's an attractive woman. She's not something that you're, or someone that you're interested in. Okay, other people will be.
Yeah.
Anyway, so later on, she tries to bring this up in the conversation by asking him what makes him feel most loved. And as soon as she asked this, you know how sometimes people ask something just so they could get you to ask it to them back.
Oh, of
that's
course.
that's what I knew immediately. She was like, "What makes you feel love?" And then he said he likes to love by giving acts of service. And she's like, "No, that's
Hmm.
not what I'm saying." Um, Either way, he said he's satisfied with what he's been getting from her. He likes actions, and even though he didn't ask, she mentioned that she enjoys physical touch.
And it just shows the disconnect between their love languages. I think for him, because he enjoys acts of service, he wants to give acts of service. When, I don't know, for Carla, you cleaning up the apartment and changing the sheets and doing all these things maybe doesn't make her feel loved. Not that it's not important,
Hmm.
but I think if he were interested, I think he'd be more motivated to show her love in the way that it would most resonate with him, because he says, "Oh well, oh, I'm not the lovey-dovey type," and
Yeah.
that's what she needs.
Even if you were interested in her, I'll tell you this, like, his response to this conversation again told us everything we needed to know. When she was expressing, "Oh, this is how I like to feel love," his response wasn't, "Oh, okay, well, I'll do better with loving you that way." Even though she started this conversation so that it would land back on her, she
Hmm.
was even listing things like, "Okay, so you would feel love if I wash the dishes and clean the thing." She was listing things, but I think for him, he said, "We got to meet in the middle." There's no meeting in the middle with love language. It's like you either do it or you don't.
And I think on the acts of service piece, it gets a little bit tricky because you yourself live in the apartment. So they showed him cleaning and tidying up a lot, which you do in your space. And so
But
I
she offered as well.
right, she did offer, and I think if he were maybe more interested, he would elaborate more in, well, what types of acts of service, because it can't be that she does all of the domestic labor in work. You're both working at this point, so now you feel loved. That's not the answer. So I think if he were interested, you'd go a little bit deeper in figuring out, okay, what types of acts of service, the frequency, and what makes sense based off the fact that we're two adults living in this apartment together, and
Hmm.
it can't all fall on her so that you feel loved. So,
Well, Carla was on the after party and so was David.
okay.
So let's segue to David and Michelle. That was awful, but all right. So Michelle and David, it starts off with David leaving this note. He's trying so hard. He said, "I'm trying to adapt to her since the text messages haven't been working. I figured I'd leave her a note." And here goes Michelle. "Well, last night you didn't leave me a note and you were out all night. So what happens then?" Girl.
And you didn't respond. Well, first
So
she
you weren't
said,
going to
well,
respond to
what was I
anything?
supposed to do? Respond to it?
I mean, or even when you see him the next time, be like, "Oh, I saw your note. I appreciated that." Bare minimum, something. So
Gosh.
she said, "David and I have more fun when we're in a friend setting."
Yeah, when we're in a group around other people, I guess because the pressure is off of her, but it shows that, I don't know, she sometimes lashes out more when they're one on one.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Well,
She
you right
definitely does.
all the time.
But I also wanted to know where David was that night. I was like, I wish he would answer because I want to know, where were you, David?
Probably up to no good, but I don't care.
Probably working out with Madison. All
Whatever.
right. So let's go to the housewarming. Michelle is, of course, very shady. So his friend brings a gift and he's like, "Oh, don't open that now. That's for later." And the way that she did her eyes, I was like, "Girl, you know they could see you. You're standing right there. People can see you making those faces at this man."
Yeah, maybe it's a gift that he doesn't want national television to know that he gave you. What's the big
Yeah.
deal?
So David says on day 17 that he's trying to figure out essentially whether or not he needs to quit. And her
Oh,
friends,
wait. Before you even get
what?
there, let's talk about how she couldn't wait to tell people that they're sleeping separately. Oh, David's bedroom is over here. Why even say that? Just say, this is our apartment. Why does that matter?
It matters to her because she doesn't want to be associated with this man. And
Eh,
the fact that they have signed legal documents that they're married is probably eating her up.
She didn't have to do all that, but continue.
But yeah, so the friends pretty much tell David, you can't enhance her life. And I was like, does Michelle want her life enhanced though? Because I don't get that sense. I think she wants someone who fits comfortably into her space. I think she wants someone who comes into her bubble and stays there.
Yeah, that can go with what she already has going on.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I just think let's be very frank here.
Yeah, nothing about what she's communicated has said, oh, I'm looking for a partner to elevate me or to take me up a level. I think she's focused more on how she's grinded and done it herself, and she just wants someone to meet her where she's at.
But I think if she were looking for someone to enhance her life, of course, David comes with his issues, but there are things that he's done that she has not done. So she's never bought a home. She's never fixed up a home and then sold it. This is something that he's done. He transformed the bar into a condo and then he sold it. Like, that's someone who can enhance your life, miss. I've never bought a home. Like,
And I also think, too, aside from the financial piece, and I'm not trying to sell David to her or to try to convince her that he's the one, but I think enhancement can come in ways in terms of experiences and having a life partner. I would say if it's a healthy relationship, doing life with another person, if it's healthy, would enhance it. So
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know that David's the partner for her, but I think
no.
aside from all the financial piece, it's nice to have another brain to bounce ideas off of and to tackle issues with and to share new experiences with. So,
Or even his relationship with his family, right? She could learn something from that. Like, okay, what is this family dynamic? I'm interested. I'm
yeah.
curious about it. But even with the financial piece, we don't know, and she doesn't know David's finances. She's assuming, right? So, I mean, somebody who sold a condo, he might have gotten something from that and he still works. So we don't know what his finances are, which to his friend's point, like David can go out and buy whatever it is that he wants right now, but he's waiting to settle down and buy a forever home, which at 36 years old, I think probably makes some sense. Like, okay, I might be settling down soon, or I'm looking to settle down. Instead of buying something and then shaping it the way that I want it, maybe let me wait for my partner. I don't know, but his friend was another one who came to read her rights.
I know. And she couldn't say anything in response, which was hilarious to me. He's like, oh, you rent, don't you? Oh, you pay double what I pay.
How
And you're
much?
not
How
going to
much?
have
How
any.
much your rent?
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Well, I own, and this is how much I pay. So you're already losing at life.
And you're not going to have anything to show for it.
And she wasn't mad at him for calling her lifestyle simple. But oh, someone in the comments last week said that they felt like David was trying to humble Michelle with the simple comments.
Oh.
And I feel like we usually pick up on that type of behavior. So I disagree with that comment, but I love that there was another perspective that was
Okay.
offered.
Well, going forward, we'll keep an ear out because I hadn't considered that perspective. But I think regardless, Michelle still sees herself above him. And I think while everything the friend said is definitely true, as far as, oh, he'll be in a good position to buy, obviously, we don't know specific details about his situation, but I think if Michelle was actually interested in him, she
Mm-hmm.
would want to get out of this space of assuming. It would be a very simple off camera conversation of, well, can you kind of lay things out for me, even at a high level? But
Let me
because she's
know.
not
Yeah.
interested, she's comfortable with being in this space of, well, I just rather judge a book by its cover and I'd
Mm-hmm.
rather assume. And so that's why in this conversation with the friend, she never rebutted and said, oh, well, you know what? I'll actually follow up and have a deeper conversation of kind of where things are and what his plans would be, upon decision day if we decide to stay together. But she's not interested, so
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
So moving on, I will say before the friend's conversation with her, she definitely felt like she was the creme de la creme. And the friend, if anybody has been trying to humble Michelle this season, it was David's friend for sure. And I think he might have succeeded a little bit, which I'm not saying that's good or bad. But anyway, moving forward, David cooks dinner for her. And I said, David is proof that men will do the most for women they like, even if the woman is mean to them. Like, Michelle has done nothing.
And
She has not even shown this man kindness.
and even in the conversation, just to step back just a little bit. So when
Hmm.
her friends, and I think her friend and sister were talking to him, they were
Hmm.
like, oh, well, maybe you should just show interest in things that she's interested in. Go to some gym or go to some
Essentially.
restaurant in her neck of the woods. And then, but then when she was sitting with his friend, her rebuttal wasn't, oh, I'll try. She was like, no, you're right. David is trying more than I am. So he's on this hamster wheel, which, okay, cook her dinner, that's fine, but I hate to see it because it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
Because you'll be cooking dinner, going to the restaurant she likes, going on this list of dates that she came up with, and none of it's going to matter at the end of the day.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I think her friends were mentioning something like, oh, but you can't change who you are entirely. And he's like, I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to better myself for our relationship. But anyway, so yeah, he cooks the dinner for her, and then he casually mentions like, yeah, flag football with everybody would be fun. I'm a little sore because I was in the gym. I went with Madison, and he just like casually runs through it, and she was like, run that back for me. When were you at the gym with Madison?
You
And
don't
he
want to
said,
hang out with them.
she just, not only does she not want him, she doesn't want anybody else to like think anything positive of him. Like it's
Hmm.
just like, or to she doesn't want anybody to paint him in an enjoyable light, and that's what I hate about her.
Yeah, she's almost enjoying that this process is a bit miserable for him. And I want to see from David, and maybe I'm being too harsh, but what do you really like about her? Do you
Nothing, because he
actually
doesn't know
feel
her.
like she would fit? Like, is this who you envisioned your wife to be? The way
Yes,
she's carrying
physically.
herself?
And she even tried to make him seem shallow, like, whoa, what were the things that you wanted? It's like, okay. Because I think she asked him, well, what did your friends think of me? And he told her,
Hmm.
like, they pretty much, they think you're shallow, you know?
Hmm.
And she was like, they feel like you have a checklist, is what he said. And so
Hmm.
you're just like checking things off. And instead of accepting or acknowledging, like that's the thing in front of him, she's like a little more hesitant to acknowledge her faults. But instead of just saying, yeah, I do have a checklist and it's not something that you measure up to, she's like, well, didn't you have a checklist too? Well, was yours only physical? Was it just blonde hair, blue eyes? And it's like, girl, he has really exhibited a lot of patience with her
I
this
agree.
season.
But
Either
yeah,
way, did you see her face when he said he went to the gym with Madison?
I did. She's pressed about it.
Very pressed,
Hmm.
pressed, pressed. Carla was
But
on the after. Oh, sorry. Go
I was
ahead.
gonna say he can't even give her a compliment hardly. Even when he was trying to compliment the outfits, she kind of ignored him at first, and that turns into, oh, well, I want to change the way you dress. This guy can't win.
You know what's funny? She said the food was good. She was like, "Yeah, you killed it." As she added boatloads of salt to the plate, and so I'm like, even that, like, what is going on with her? And I made specific note of this because she kept cutting him off when they had the checklist conversation. But a few weeks ago, she was like on edge because, oh,
Let me
you keep
talk.
cutting me off. Let me talk. Can you let me talk? And he wasn't even cutting her off like that. So yeah. Anyway, that's all I have on them.
Yeah, but he seems to be happy with the fact that he can smile and have enjoyable scenes with her. So
I think he's just a happy-go-lucky person.
he
But
is.
all right, Ikechi and Mem.
Ooh, ooh,
What
ooh, ooh.
what was this conversation? He was also on the after party. So they do it now where it's like half the time with two people and then okay. But what was this conversation about the making tacos? Didn't that feel uncomfortable for you?
And you want to talk about low effort? We've seen so many Mexican fiesta taco themes on this show.
Very unoriginal.
Very much so. But it was so odd. And so they're talking about how she ordered tacos for the party, which I think is perfectly fine. Y'all are both working, busy. If you want to outsource it, that makes sense. He says, oh, well, I could have made them. She's like, oh, okay. But he continues to harp on the fact of, well, it's not that difficult to do. She's like, well, I don't want to try a new recipe when I'm having people over for the first time. It also requires energy and effort. She basically says, oh, well, we could cancel it. Like, you could still do it. He's like, oh, well, I didn't offer to do it. I was just letting you know I could do it.
He was being a little condescending with the, well, you just what did he say? Fry up the fish and break it up into little pieces. It's not that hard. Like he was being very condescending. I didn't like that because I get it. Maybe what he should have said was that he wanted to also be an active part of planning the party. Open your mouth. Open your mouth and say that because for her, it's just like, oh, I have things going on. You have things going on. Let me just make this easy for it. Let me take the initiative. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that it's one less thing you don't have to worry about, taking the burden off your plate. And on the after party, he said that he had so many things that he was paying attention to that week. And so Keisha Napoleon goes, oh, and Stasha was there too. But Keisha Napoleon was like, so did you take a second and think that maybe she knew what you had going on and decided to take something off of your plate or make it so that you don't even have to worry about it and things are already done?
I get the vibe from him that he's just sometimes unnecessarily argumentative. Where he's
Sassy.
maybe, but this going back and forth about fish tacos, it doesn't make any sense to me. All for you to say, but I actually didn't want to do it. I
So
would be
now,
weird.
right. So now we went back and forth for nothing.
Have conversations with me with purpose. Or just say, oh, next time I can maybe do it. Or
Yeah.
like, oh, fish tacos are my, or tacos are my thing. Oh, okay, now I know. But what did she say? Oh, well, you never said. You never brought it up. You know
And
this
he,
party is happening.
to his defense, she never asked, but also there are times where you don't know what to ask and what not to ask. So, I mean, hindsight's 2020. Maybe when they're planning things in the future, she'll ask and maybe he'll offer.
But then part of this conversation, he also brings up like, oh, the last conversation I had with Rafui. Am I saying his name right? Rafui?
Rafi,
Rafiu. Rafiu, he said was aggressive. I said, how, Sway? Aggressive where?
I can see how he would interpret it as that. It wasn't warm and welcoming. It was
It was
very,
direct.
yes, that's what I put. I was like, it was super super direct and protective, which I think you can understand in a situation like that where he feels like he's acting as the male member of the family.
She's lost her father and he's stepping in as the male protector figure within her family.
Yeah.
So what exactly did you expect? And to be honest, I think had you been more forthcoming in how you were answering the questions, the energy probably would have been different because he was so short.
I'll be honest with you. I think Raphael also, not at the wedding, but definitely on this night, maybe egged it on a little bit, to be
Oh well, yeah,
very
yeah.
honest,
This
you
night,
know?
yeah, yeah. At the
Yeah. But at
wedding,
the wedding, no.
he didn't. I felt like he was asking more questions, the same way how Emim is asking questions to get to know and understand him. It's the same thing to me that Raphael was doing at the wedding. But
That part.
anyways,
Anyways, so so they said that when they had the party finally, so it's Amem's best friend and her cousin Raphael, and Ikechi's cousin and her husband, which was interesting because her husband said more than she did. Like, did we hear a word from the cousin? I don't think we did. But they said that they came back from the honeymoon feeling more connected. This kind of breaks my heart saying, because Amem said that she feels like a safety when she's expressing herself, which bothers me considering what happened just a few minutes after that.
I
But
know.
yeah. So to bring everybody up to speed, Raphael asks, how would you guys describe each other in 5 words? And Ikechi says beautiful, which his cousin-in-law compliment, well, like, gave him kudos for. He said beautiful, passionate, ambitious, a little aggressive. If you are a woman of a certain hue, if you are a man of a certain hue, you know there are fighting words that you do not say when describing a woman of a certain hue. And that is it. That's one of them.
Oh yeah, and in fact, it would be highly triggering if it was a person of a different race that said that, just given the history and the stereotypes of, oh yeah, they're aggressive, they're violent.
He's too culturally aware. If this were Thomas, sorry, if this were Thomas who had said it, I might be like, oh, he don't know no better. But because it's Ikechi, like, you knew exactly what you were doing with that choice of words. And even on the after party, they addressed this with him, And when he was on the after party, Camille was there with him. And he said that he and Camille had conversations about the whole race thing. And so that leads me to further believe you knew exactly what you were doing with that choice of words.
And for you to have a way with words, be into poetry, you couldn't find any other words. And
It
then
was
he
intentional.
it was, and he brings up this thing around, oh well, I'm from the South. Don't rep us.
Okay, the thing that he said about the South to me was like bizarre, because he was trying to say he's from the South and so he don't like people touching him like that. And she's from Chicago, so she might like that. Is
Well,
it me or is
he was used to more laid back energy and not as much in your face. That's how he described it.
But it seemed like he was discussing that in terms of physical connection.
I took it to mean both. Now,
Very interesting.
something I will say that I've heard is people comparing people from New York. I haven't heard anything about Chicago, but I've heard the differences of like New York versus the South or New York versus the West Coast and
I
just how
get it.
people carry themselves. I haven't heard it in regards to Chicago, but regardless, that is not the vibe we've gotten from Emim, so it's pointless.
And I think that's what hurt her the most. She said, considering how she's shown up in this relationship, like aggressive, that's a lot. The way that she handled herself, I think she handled it very well. It seemed like she wasn't going to harp on it and that it was a conversation that she was going to have later. In fact, she listed the things that he is, and she only said complimentary things about him. I think the only thing that could be perceived as negative was, that he was nonchalant. And she didn't provide that word. It was a word that was given to her. And so once the word nonchalant comes up, he's like, oh, I don't like the connotation of nonchalant. And her friend goes, I don't like the connotation of aggressive. I said, I know that's right. You better. The friends were friending this
They
episode,
really
okay?
were.
They
And he
were.
was, in my opinion, being kind of rude and snappy with her.
With a friend, right?
Yeah, and to
Yeah.
me, he opened up the door with the nonchalant comment because he described himself as being laid back. And I specifically wrote, he said something about her it feeling like an interview and asking a series of questions. And so he has this more laid back approach, I guess, to getting to know her. And I could see why the friend would say nonchalant, like, you're not as energetic about getting to know your wife.
Even the way that he responded to the friend when she said, I don't like the connotation of aggressive, he said, well, it ain't about you. He asked me. Like, if someone had talked to if someone talked to Neosha like that, they red flag, red flag, red flag. They'll get 3 red flags for that one small statement. I'm not even playing. Don't talk to my friends like that.
So now I'm seeing why you said sassy, because him responding like that was giving sassy.
Very much.
I
All
see
the
it now.
sass.
I see it.
All the
Yep.
sass. So yeah, I definitely would have felt a way about that. But then Imem finally says, like, y'all gotta stop calling black women aggressive, and she names what the problem was. And it's so funny to me because when Raphael says, like, I asked you if you could handle her, like, maybe you just need to lean into that and accept the aggressive. There's nothing wrong with being aggressive. Some people like that. You lean into it and you like it. Like, you have a woman who's a leader, essentially. He
Well,
didn't say the word.
he was also getting to the point of, well, somebody has to lead. Someone has to be has more energy and be ambitious. Someone has to do it. So if you're not going to do it, I guess she has to do it. So I will say in that regard, Refu was kind of trying to read him on the sly.
I mean, if you call my cousin aggressive, prepare to be read.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But yeah, and then he goes down like, now I can lead. I can lead. I had put down that he started the I can lead conversations. Like
He did.
it, he did, right? And I thought it was interesting that he jumped to the, oh, well, I can lead, like trying to prove himself. I didn't know what to think about that. Like, okay, is he insecure? Is he feeling emasculated? Which she's done nothing. Anyway, we know with these people all the time, but I haven't seen anything in her that suggests that. She's talked to him calmly. I guess the worst thing is that she plans stuff, which I'm a planner. And Stasha was on the after party and she was saying, like, I relate to your wife a lot. I would be asking questions. I would be taking initiative. That's just who I am. So you have to explain to me, like, what is going on here. Sasha kind of came for him too on the after party. I'm not gonna lie.
Love it.
I know. Okay. So I put down that I felt like the men were having
Yeah, a
a
chest
member
beating
swinging. Yes, there we go.
contest. Yeah,
I didn't write it down as chest beating. I
yeah.
wrote it down as words that I don't know if you can say on YouTube, but
Uh,
yeah.
swinging contest.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wrote. And I bleeped it out on my phone. Okay. So, but I did agree with one thing Akechi said, and that was, if you're my partner and you're more knowledgeable in an area, I'm comfortable with you taking the lead in that. I think that's the benefit of partnership. You're not going to know everything. And so in theory, I think Ikechi knows things. In practice, not so much.
And again, but what does that have to do with aggressive? I think either he intentionally used the wrong word. It's almost like he's trying to weaponize,
Her success.
yeah, certain things about her against her as if it's a problem.
He knew it would. He knew it would hit the way that he. Yeah.
And
And
she
so
said, it hurts because it's a misrepresentation of how she's carried herself in this process so far. But then I think it was his cousin-in-law who jumped in and said, like, well, it could be helpful. Like she could inspire you I don't know,
yeah,
get you more on board. But I don't know that
yeah.
he would be interested in that.
No, he's not interested in that. He's not interested in her. Leonard is the cousin-in-law. He was like, I think it's a good thing that you're so different. Mem said something. She said that they have been on the surface and she's ready to kind of get to the hard stuff. You know, like, because everything is so surface level. And I could see that in the conversations that they were having with, that Ikechi was having with Rafiu and her friend. So, like, Rafiu said, "What's the most exciting thing y'all have done?" He didn't
Nothing.
have an answer. He was like, "Well, you know, I have work and all that stuff, you know." The same thing Juan said, essentially. I have
Yeah,
work, I have
there's
sleep, and I have the gym.
yeah, he says, "Oh, well, there's no time." Rafi says, "Oh, well, you have to court her or you're going to bore her." He's like, "Yeah, well, I'm boring."
They were. Yeah, they were button heads. But
What?
I get what Rafi was saying. Like, you have to treat her like a lady too. Yes, you guys are in this process, but take her out to eat. Do nice things for her. Like, it doesn't have to be. You guys are just getting to know each other. One way of getting to know each other is through doing activities with each other.
And I said last week, based off how he handled the whole apartment viewing,
Hmm.
her place versus his place, it was already giving, I'm going to give minimal effort and energy because you don't need it. So last week is, oh, you're big money, you got it. This week is, oh, well, I'm too busy to court you or really date you in the process.
And it
So,
doesn't even have to be stuff like that's out of the house, but even inside, just being intentional. So one of the things Ikechi said on the after party was that he and Imem had a conversation, and the things that they discussed in the conversation, he felt like he was hearing them again from her cousin and from her friend. And so it's like, okay, obviously she would be talking to those people. Stasha said something like, well, you are saying that you've been doing everything, because this is what he said, you've been doing everything to create a safe space for her, but has it occurred to you that maybe she doesn't feel safe coming to you because you might view her as aggressive, and so she's like having to speak to her family and friends about things that she should be able to come to you about, and now they're trying to assist her by bringing those things up to you, which what
yeah.
she said.
As well as because of it being a unique process, the whole point of her bringing in family is to help her in the vetting process that's happening in a very short period of time. So I would expect that she would share certain things so that they are more up to speed on where things are so that the time that you're with them can be productive.
I think it started off as them just trying to see where this man's head was, but because his response rendered him unlikable, his responses rendered him unlikable, I think at that point the cousin specifically just started digging. Like, okay, so are you trying to change? What do you see yourself after this? Are you trying to be with
Future
her? Are you changing
plans.
the names? Are
Yeah.
you joining accounts? And it's like, okay, those are things that they probably haven't had a chance to even talk about. But I get the point that it's, Ikechi is in here like, oh, we'll figure it out. We'll see where this goes. And a mem came for a marriage. He even said that on the after party. I feel like a mem is like, oh, I got my husband. We're married. This is it. Whereas I'm like, okay, how are you? Who are you? I want to get to know you. And Stasha's like, okay, but how is she supposed to get to know you when you don't want to answer any of her questions? He feels like she's always questioning. And it's like, yeah, because she don't know you.
Then why wouldn't you do a traditional matchmaker and not go get married at first sight? That's
Exactly.
all fine and good that you want to take things slow, but I think the way MM is handling it is kind of the
What
attitude
this
you need to
process
have.
is
And
for.
when the cousin was pressing him on, well, do you see yourself falling in love in this process? I don't think he was looking for specifics. I would think he was looking for, are you even open to the possibility? And the way he laughed at it, I think told us everything we needed to know that he's not even open to it. So,
Yeah. All right. Allan and Madison. See, I didn't call them Addison this time, or Allison, whatever. Okay.
oh wait, we forgot one more thing. He also
What?
let Chrissy know, Mim's best friend, that he wasn't here to please y'all.
When she did her diary cam,
He said, "Let me get it together."
let me get it together. She's already seeing all the red flags. I owe to be a fly on the wall for that conversation that Mim and Chrissy had after they left that night. He ain't it, sister. He's not it. All right.
But
Allan and Madison.
okay,
All right, so they went to they went to the gym together.
What was that workout class?
I think, is it called the Versa Climber? Like, it's something, but you just do it for like 30 minutes, I think. I almost signed up to do a class like that, but then I didn't go. But it looks interesting.
It does. And poor guy looked like he was about to fall out.
Allan was like me in solid core. I was like, oh my God, is this about to end? I need out.
Is everybody else dying like me?
Looking around like, somebody help me. But yeah, she have to laugh at him, but shout out to him for trying. And I love that Allan acknowledged that Madison is motivating him, to try different things. I like how he started out that entire conversation after the workout class, and how he came back around to, okay, but I also need this thing, because I have found myself frustrated when Allan doesn't label the things that he needs, or he doesn't express himself, and it seems like that's something Madison is also frustrated with. But
I agree, but in that moment, he did voice it. So I think
yeah.
the real question is, are you going to address it? Which I don't think that you are, because you went to go watch the game by yourself with your friends. So I don't want to jump ahead, but he did voice in that moment, hey, this is an area where you could, or we could improve, but mainly her.
Yeah, so I'm glad that he spoke up, and I just love how he addressed the entire thing. He did it like almost like a sandwich, how they like a compliment sandwich or whatever. So started with saying the things that he loves about being in the relationship with her, and then saying, but I need quality time with you. So yeah. Okay. So this next scene kind of confused me. I was like back and forth on this, like, oh, that's so sweet. What? That's crazy. Oh, that's so sweet. But it was when she brought him the pancakes in bed. And then she was like, okay, so you have to leave because I'm having girls' day. I was like, that's rude.
I
And then we find
know.
out it's for a surprise party. So I thought that was a nice effort on her part.
It was. And I know a lot of people online are saying that, oh, she's exactly like Michelle. But I think Madison is at least trying. I think even Allan has said that they're living together easy. He doesn't seem to be super uncomfortable. So the romance piece isn't there, but I'm not getting mean girl. The
At
only
all.
thing that I would say that she's done so far that I think is unacceptable is the not coming home the
Going out
first
that
night
night.
and going out. But other than that, she does seem to be pleasant to live with, and she's putting up with his crazy dog. So,
She can't stand that dog, but every time she talks about it, she's very polite, very classy, very cutesy, very demure. All right, but I love the surprise party. I think he deserved that. Even the attention to detail, like the jaguar on the cake, she did her thing. So shout out to you, Madison. And then he compliments her. He's like, "Oh, you look really nice," which I thought was a very nice touch. It was just very cute. And then he talked about how his quads were killing him. He was like, "These guys," and she's like, "Your quads." He goes, "Whatever they're called, they're killing me." So yeah, the conversations with the friends. I had to send Miosha a voice note because I was just like so irritated with Allan's friends cutting Madison off. It's
yeah.
like they were trying to sell, you have a great guy over there, so much that they weren't listening to the things that she was saying. Like, oh, I want him to express himself more. Like, I know I'm not perfect. You can make comments about maybe, what I'm doing, what I'm saying, how I'm reacting, all of that. Like, you can make comments on those things. But they kept cutting her off and asking questions or trying to reassure her. And I was like, just let her talk. Because I don't think their conversation was as fruitful as it could have been had they just listened.
And I think because he's probably shared with them, oh, the romance pieces missing, I think because he's their friend, they see him as a great guy, a good catch.
Yeah.
They were very eager to sell him, but not as open to listening. But I go back to I just don't think it's there for her, so I don't even know that it would have mattered much.
It's not there for her, but I could at least see the effort, right, being
Oh
put
yeah.
in. But her friends, I thought, did an exceptional job. Like, see how they just listened to him. There was no cutting off. He was able to express his full thoughts, and then they told her, they shared their feedback. Like, tell
Mm-hmm.
her what you want more often. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything else on them until the group gathering. So we can
Something
move
I
on.
liked about what her friend said was, well, for the
Mm.
right person, she would adjust.
Yes, because he wants more like I I get what he's saying where, she wakes up and she has like a schedule and she's on.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I want to have lazy days and all of that stuff. There are two
Balance.
people
Yeah.
in this world: the person who wants to wake up early and be super productive, the person who
Mm-hmm.
wants to sleep in and be more productive at night. And a lot of times they marry each other. And so, like,
Mm-hmm.
figuring out that balance, I think, is essential. And we saw this play out in the episode, but I feel him. Like, some days I don't want a full schedule, I want to just flow.
And also do things that interest him. He's going to the gym, which will benefit him as well. But okay, well, what are things that he's interested in that you could do with him as
Yeah.
well?
Let's
Yeah.
binge a show. Okay, and then we see this come up later on.
Hmm.
Do we want to talk about it now or when we talk about the flag football?
We could talk about it with the flag football.
Okay, cool. So let's move
Hmm.
on to. Oh, do we only have one more couple left?
Hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Thomas and Camille.
You said that people are comparing Madison and Michelle. I saw comments last week saying that Camille, Madison, and Michelle are the same. Can we not lump everybody into the same group because this is not what we're seeing? And I know people are
Hmm.
going to be like, because somebody said this last week. She was like, Samaria, and she's one of our like regular viewers. So, but she
Hmm.
was like, you always have a season favorite every week, and she was like, this every season, and this season it's Camille. I actually think my favorite person this season is Thomas because I don't see him like engaging with the
Hmm.
drama. Like he's just very
Hmm.
chill, and I love a chill guy, but I do also like Camille for sure.
So I'm gonna start. I kind of want to give some observations before
Okay.
we get into the nitty gritty of Thomas and Camille.
Hmm.
And because after last week, you were like, oh, people are comparing them. I started watching some other videos and looking at some comments, not just ours. Uh, but I want to say first, I think this whole conversation, I think, is a bit triggering for Black people. I think one because of Black American people specifically. I know that there's Black people from other parts of the world. So I think one because of the history of this country, and just what has happened in terms of us losing our culture, regaining our a new culture, as well as Black people being forced to accept biracial mixed people as Black. I think it's also triggering for Black American people because of the questioning of Blackness that happens within the Black community. So, whether you're a high yellow Black person who is mixed, or you're very fair skinned and you have two Black parents, or you're a fully Black person, I think there's this sometimes what we see as harmless banter that happens of, oh, your Black card gonna be revoked, or oh, I don't want my kids to be too light skinned, is the daddy white, or that type of
Yeah.
energy of questioning of Blackness. And a lot of times it's not from a positive place. And from what I've observed, especially with biracial Black people, it could be a highly sensitive topic of them being Black enough, as well
Hmm.
as fully Black people who maybe embrace other cultures or aren't stereotypical Black. This whole idea of questioning Blackness, I think, is triggering for a lot of Black people. And then I think the last reason I think it's triggering is this happens later in the episode, and I won't dive into it too much, but specifically, her sister said at the table, we're three Black people, we're three Black identified people. And I
Hmm.
think that's triggering for people in terms of biracial people versus fully Black people, where them sitting at the table, as she says, they're identifying as Black. So there's this element of them being black, but them choosing to embrace it versus not. Um, so I think there's a lot of things going on here. Um, and so I think that's why this whole conversation, Camille specifically, I think that's why it's rubbing people the wrong way. Um, because it's bringing up a lot more than just her maybe
Their
not
relationship.
having the romantic connection with her husband,
Mm-hmm.
um, especially the whole part of them identifying as being black and being able to maneuver through the world as a mixed person, and just how that experience is different than a black person who looks like me. So,
Yeah, I'm gonna go through because we're gonna talk about it more. So I'll start by going through the episode. So initially, they're hanging out with each other's families. So
hmm
I really liked this that she brought her sister and her friends to his. I love to see the families coming together and the friends coming together.
hmm
I think that was really special. But I said, those burgers look like they made their way out of the freezer. Because he was like, yeah, my brother loves to cook and all this. And so when I saw the burgers, I was like, that look homemade to me.
it looked
So,
like a veggie burger.
but not a homemade one, right? It
Mm-mm.
was too
Yeah.
perfectly, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I just thought it was funny. Um, but yeah, and I thought the conversations for the most part were natural and fun and playful. Like when he offered to get his brother the beer, and they were like, "Well, what about your wife? You didn't ask her what she
hmm
wants to drink." Like, I thought that was really comfortable. That type of banter already happening. So yeah, I really like Thomas. I can tell that he's really trying to be his best for this woman. I can tell that he
hmm
really likes her, and I enjoy watching him. I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the friends, when they were all in the pool,
hmm
were talking about men that she previously dated. And I thought they could have been a lot more gentle with the way that the conversation was brought up. I don't know all the details. I don't know all the things that they know, but just as a viewer, I was like, oh, y'all could have been a little bit more delicate. But I think she steered the conversation. So when they were like, oh, you haven't dated anybody as light as him, or you haven't dated anybody as this as him. And she was like, well, even personality wise, like she was the only one to say something negative about the type of people who she's dated before, right? So she said, I've typically been attracted to guys who are really loud and showboaty, I think was what she
hmm
said. And so I appreciated her like pointing out negative characteristics about the people who she's dated, because one, that shows that she sees one, a positive difference in how Thomas is, even though it's an adjustment, but also it wasn't a conversation around, oh yeah, I need to get me one of those guys again, you
Oh
know.
yeah. I
So
don't know. From that conversation, I just was like, well, what's the point of talking about this? Um,
yeah.
what's the point? It,
I also noted that the one friend who seemed the most concerned was the one who, I don't know if she has any black in her, but is the one that seems non-black. And I thought it was interesting that she was the one who was so pressed about, well, she usually dates these types of, this type of guy.
hmm
I A conversation happened later that I also appreciate, and that was when they brought up what type of woman he had previously dated.
hmm
I was like, stay there. I want to hear more about who he's been in relationship with, because that could give us more context. I feel like this episode gave us a lot more context. I don't know if you feel that way, to why Camille has been feeling how she's been feeling.
Well, yeah, I think they're going down this comparison road of, well, what I used to go for versus who's in front of me now. I will say a stark difference I noticed was that none of his side mentioned, from what we saw, anything physical
Hmm.
about the person. They said, oh, well, you're the most genuine person. And what else did they say? We think you'll motivate him to be himself, but nothing physical. Her side focused on the physical side. She
Yeah.
brought up, the showboaty versus the loud,
Mm-hmm.
the personality difference maybe. But I don't know. I just really don't care for this whole conversation of who you used to date, how they're different. I just don't really care for it as
In
much.
Camille's case, I think it matters. But this comes later on down the road. So like this conversation I didn't love either, especially how her friends brought it up. And I wrote down that I thought the men did their thing by complimenting her in comparison to the other women. Not that it
Mm-hmm.
needed to be a whole comparison thing, but I put that I think her friends need to take note and do more of that. You know, like, oh, you're the most calm person she's dated. You're the most, I don't know, secure person she's dated. List those positive things so that Thomas can hear it. But I will say, at the pool party, Tim's brother, or Thomas's brother, Tim,
Mm-hmm.
asked, "Can you elaborate on the cultural difference?" And this
Mm-hmm.
conversation to me was very meaningful. So you see Thomas talking to her friends, and he's like, "I don't really get it. Like, what's the cultural difference?" And she says, there's a bar that he mentioned that you guys frequent. And this bar is known for several racist like incidents. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's like, why does he feel comfortable going to that space where everybody knows the reputation? I get that. You know, we live in Atlanta, and I remember years back there was a lot of conversation around Stone Mountain, and you know, a lot of black people just not feeling comfortable going there because of certain flags that they have and all of that in the history of Stone Mountain, you know? So if
Mm-hmm.
I were to date someone and they didn't respect, like, they didn't understand what gave me pause about that, and I had to explain it, it would also feel like, do you get the culture to me?
I will say I think Thomas's reaction of, well, what's the difference? I think he seems a bit more surface level in that he's looking at her as a biracial woman.
Yeah.
He's a biracial man. So I think for him up until this point, he's kind of like, well, you're like me. Where's the difference?
Yes.
And I think that's a problem for her because she sees the clear difference. And this example of the places that you frequent is an
Mm-hmm.
example of how they are different. I will say, based off some of the things she said later, in that, like, oh, I don't think it'll be an issue or a red flag that would hold us back. What I would need to see from Thomas would be his level of openness to having certain conversations. So I understand it could be like, oh, that's shocking that you wouldn't see it as a problem that you go there, or maybe you're just so
Mm-hmm.
oblivious to everything that's going on. I think the next step is, well, how open are you to exploring these ideas,
I think
given
it
that y'all are
matters.
already married? So,
Yeah, I think it matters how deeply invested in social justice, like just to be very frank, right? How deeply invested in social justice Camille is. Because if she's deeply invested and you have someone who maybe you have to explain some rudimentary, things to for them to get on board. I think it's James Baldwin who said, like, to be a black person in the US, this is such a paraphrase, but essentially is to mean that you're always like irate, you're always angry because there's just so much that goes on that if you're paying attention, you can't not be reactive or you can't not feel a certain way. And so I think a turn off that I clearly saw, in this episode, I don't want to say turn off, but a thing that maybe is making her hesitant is, you don't see like, this place is on fire and you're not seeing it. And I can see how in a long-term partner, because that person is the person who you're with the most out of everybody in your life, like that's the person who you would raise a family with. I can see how his ignorance, and that I don't mean that in a mean way, I just mean like his lack of awareness, right, of it. I can see why it's taking her a second to just come to terms with all of it. I think last week and in previous weeks, it's been like, oh, okay, he's not black. What does he not listen to certain music? Does he not like wear Jordan? Like, what is it that you think is this blackness? But now for me, I'm like, okay, this could be like a political difference that needs to be looked at.
Okay.
So it made better sense for me. Someone left a comment. I might have deleted it, but they were like, "Oh, he wears a do rag," and I was like, I might have deleted the comment because I was just like, I don't think you meant it the way it came across. So just I didn't want to start anything in the comment. I'm like, anyways,
Yeah. Yeah, it's clearly a disconnect for her. I'd hope at this point that because she's already married to him that she'd be open to exploring um like how deep this difference is going to
affect.
run for her, and also getting kind of like where does he stand as far as his maybe activism or reactiveness to those types of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she said it's not a red flag, it's not a deal breaker.
Yeah.
But I think she also has to come to terms with the fact that she's going to be his cultural coach with certain things that he doesn't know. And is that something that you can overlook because he's such a great guy, because he's freaking phenomenal, like is that something that you're willing to work through with him? And I hope that she is, although I wouldn't want to put that burden on, anybody or make them feel like they have to take it on. Like if she decides it's not something that she can do, I would be okay with it, but it's something that I hope works out for the both of them. And so at the end, I think her sister's comments articulated so beautifully what everybody felt at that table and what they
Oh
couldn't
yeah.
articulate themselves.
Yeah, where she was talking about the cultural differences and how it's very complex them being three black identified people having this conversation. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think Camille also asked him, like, okay, who have you dated in the past? Like, what type of woman have you dated in the past? Have you dated a black woman in the past? Like, I think she specifically asked that. And so, back to the thing that you were saying about, oh, I don't know that it's useful to have the whole comparison conversation. I think for someone like Camille, and with someone like Thomas, that is a conversation that needs to be had. Like, have you dated someone who maybe is as conscious as I am? Have you maybe dated more outside of your race, and so this hasn't been an issue for you? It's not been something that you've had to pay attention to, but now if you're married to me, you're going to have to. Like, what is your past so that I know how to proceed? So I thought it was necessary for her to know who he's dated.
Yeah, something her sister also said at the table was they need to establish how they will maneuver, if it will be as a black couple. Um, she also brings up how their experience being black women, how they've been essentially pushed. She said there are stronger forces that push us to identify as black women first and foremost, and talking about the differences between him as a man and his experience being biracial versus, and they brought up their brother as well. Um, yeah, it's
It's complex.
something that I thought about is you know I agree their experiences being biracial are different. I
Hmm.
think from what I've observed, many biracial people kind of you don't really always get the choice to choose what culture you embrace. And so I
Mm,
think them being biracial black women, they've been maybe more readily accepted into black
black.
spaces, being black women, versus his experience. I think it also depends on the white side of the family if there is accepting of you or
Yeah.
not. And so I think with that whole conversation, it it brings up a whole other set of thoughts of, well, I don't think it should be held against him his stance and how he's chosen to maneuver through this world, just because your experience has been different. And if you
Not
want
held
someone who
against
aligns,
him. Hmm.
yeah, if you
Not.
want someone who aligns with you, I think that that's fine. But
Mhm.
um, yeah, the more these conversations go on, I kind of understand why it's just rubbing people the wrong way. I don't think that Camille and her sister are saying anything wrong. I think that it's just a bit jarring to people. Um, I think it's jarring to black people that three biracial people are sitting at a table.
I don't think it's just black people. I don't think a lot of the people who, yeah,
Um,
I think people of other races too are commenting about how this is not a big deal because from their perspective it isn't,
well,
but it is.
I'm not saying that I don't think it's a big deal. I think it's just an interesting conversation given that they're black identified, and I think
Mhm.
that's just what's bothering people. Like there's this big conversation around blackness, um, that's I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I do want us to quickly get to
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
the flag football thing, but yeah, I think I would say for the internet, Thomas doesn't seem to, whatever is going on with them in their relationship, Thomas doesn't seem to mind it. And Camille doesn't seem to mind. Like, he wants her to talk about these things. He's open to these
Hmm.
conversations. So it seems like outside of the internet, they're navigating it just fine. Like, it's not causing any issues in their relationship. He's open to hearing and she's open to talking. But I think,
Yeah.
was there one thing that stood out to you at the flag football thing besides Allan not coming?
Yeah. So the to me the biggest thing was Alan not coming,
Hmm.
and maybe I'm just giving him too much of a pass, but if it was his birthday and he was out celebrating, um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the timing of everything, but I could also understand why Madison was upset that he wasn't there at something that she put together. So I could
Hmm.
guess I see both sides of it.
Yeah.
And I could see how it would be annoying. Like, we have somewhere to be tomorrow. Why are you drinking like this? So,
Yeah, or if you're gonna drink, like, I don't know if you could hold your liquor or not. This is our first time out together. It sounds
yeah.
like so. If I plan something and the only person to not show up is my spouse, that would irritate me a lot. And she seems to be a scheduled person, so again, it's their personalities, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyways, you guys let us know what you thought about this episode, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.
Bye.